Hello, thank you for taking time out. This video is on the constellation of Rewati, which is ruled by Lord Pushan. I'll be sharing the mythology linked to him first, and later we'll be going through how different planets behave in this nakshatra. Now, Lord Pushan's main responsibility is to guide us after we have departed our bodies. He escorts us on our next journey, whether the journey leads to us returning to this creation playing a different role, or it's a path to salvation. He makes sure our journey to the next chapter of our soul is smooth, the journey is smooth. So immediately the entire navigation sector is directly linked to this constellation. Lord Pushan is known to have known all different paths leading to different futures, and he guides the souls accordingly. That's his role. And whilst we are living, he's guiding us, making sure our journey is progressing. We are transcending on a spiritual plane. He's detaching us from materialism. He is guiding us to go from the sensual side of life to a more spiritual side of life. This is reminding me of a quotation from the Bhagavad Gita, which roughly translates to: the senses naturally get attached to sensual objects. We like and dislike sensual objects. But there's a warning in the Bhagavad Gita: do not get attached to those sensual pleasures, as they defeat your soul's purpose, or they delude you into thinking that life's purpose is simply centered around enjoying life on a material plane. That wisdom, that understanding, I believe, comes from Lord Pushan. He guides us either through life experience or appears in our life in the form of a teacher. So all teachers, mentors, guides, educators, trainers you come across who help you see the right path in life are directly linked to this constellation. So naturally all religious and spiritual leaders belong to this constellation. So Lord Pushan not only is guiding us on a spiritual plane, he's also guiding us towards righteousness and truthfulness. He's also making sure our journey is safe. He's also preventing us from taking the wrong direction, following the wrong path. So on a physical plane, this can translate to the native being a career counselor or a travel agent guiding us. This is the path you need to take. This is the right option. Even lawyers helping us see which path, which direction, which argument to present. Lord Pushan is known to be privy to all of our activities. He's monitoring our activities, making sure we continue to follow the right path. So if you have a strong Revati's influence in your chart, time and again you'll run into the right kind of guidance, the right kind of people who guide you, that this is not for you. You need to follow a different direction. And the native oneself can actually guide others on the right path. And since Lord Pushan is privy to our activities, he also knows the whereabouts of lost items, missing people. And therefore he's worshipped to recover those lost items. He's worshipped to find those missing people. And all professions directly or indirectly linked to this industry. Recovery of items, finding lost people is directly linked to Revati. He is the shepherd. And when the sheep is lost, he's guiding the sheep back to the herd. The herd which is transcending on a spiritual plane. He's also known to be a god of prosperity, very much like Lord Bhaga. He is known to bestow his bounty equally amongst people. So the Revati native would also be very impartial in one's magnanimity. In many ways, Lord Pushan is responsible for us to reach our final destination. Whether it's on a physical plane, he's not only guiding us but also providing for us and preventing us falling at common pitfalls. That's his duty. And he's known to travel back and forth between the earthly plane and the heavens. Therefore, he's known to bring the magical powers of the heavens on an earthly plane. And for that reason, Venus is exalted in this constellation. And therefore, the native might possess an extraordinary creative ability which would be nothing short of magic. And I'd like to give you a great example. Houdini, the great magician, had a very strong Revati's influence on his chart. His greatest skill was to be able to find a way to escape from all the chains and locks that bound him. And that is another quality linked to Revati, that the native has the intellect to discover and find a solution, find a way from a difficult problem. And it is for that reason, in my view, Mercury is the planetary ruler of this constellation. The native's ability to creatively find a solution to a complicated problem would be one of the native's greatest strengths. Another great example is the famous painter Vincent van Gogh. In his chart I found Sun in Revati, which in my view is behind his extraordinary creative ability. Earlier I'd mentioned all spiritual and religious leaders can have a strong Revati's influence, and that is visible in the case of Paramhansa Yogananda, the author of the famous book, The Autobiography of a Yogi. In his chart I found Jupiter in Revati. So that's another great example. At this stage I'd like to share with you how this constellation is classified. Firstly, this constellation has the nature of Mridu, which translates to soft. So this guidance we are receiving due to Revati, it is not forced on us. We are guided politely. We are guided and comforted. That is the character of Lord Pushan that justifies this classification. And that guidance we are getting is in the form of a service. And therefore this constellation belongs to the caste of a Shudra, which translates to public service. The Revati native would be very service-oriented. The temperament belonging to this constellation is divine, the Gana of Deva. I'd mentioned this constellation is a lot to do with transcending on a spiritual plane, which justifies this classification. And lastly, the guna, the quality of this constellation is Sattvic, which translates to selfless behavior. So a Revati native would be guiding people, would consider that as a service, and would largely remain detached from selfish interest. The native would perform one's duty of guiding others selflessly. I don't think any other nakshatra has a classification as beautiful as Revati. It is also said Revati combines the skills of all the previous constellation. It is the last nakshatra, and therefore it has many endearing qualities. So if you find Revati's influence in your chart, you should consider yourself very lucky. At this stage I'd like to share a list of careers linked to Lord Pushan. Lord Pushan is also directly linked to looking after herd animals, and therefore all professions somehow linked to animal welfare is directly linked to Revati. I find everyone involved in the navigation industry or the transportation sector, everyone working in the shipping sector, roads, railways, including taxi drivers, pilots, captains of ships, lighthouse keepers. One of the symbols of this constellation is a fish swimming in the sea, which is symbolic of our soul's journey, where we transcend on a spiritual plane and cross the cosmic ocean. And therefore all professions somehow linked to the seas, like a marine biologist, can be seen with this constellation. I'm now highlighting some of the professions due to Mercury's rulership. The native can be a crime solver, a detective, a counselor, can be excellent at finding missing people, lost items, etc. Since Venus is exalted in this constellation, the native can also be in a creative career such as music, dance, poetry, photography, or any kind of career in the entertainment sector. And lastly, since this constellation is a lot about guiding people, the native can be a career counselor, a travel advisor, or even an astrologer. And not to forget, religious and spiritual leaders have a strong Revati's influence. I'd like to at this stage share my views on the native's character. The native would naturally be charming, that's due to this Venus's exaltation, would be polite, this constellation is soft, Mridu, would be intuitive, that comes from Mercury's rulership, selfless, caring, protective, kind, pure of heart, generous, optimistic, and would be fond of travel and naturally spiritually inclined. A lot will also depend on in which sign does this constellation fall in the Navamsha. So if it's the sign of Sagittarius, people would look up to you for guidance. You'd also showcase Jupiterian qualities in addition to Venus and Mercury's qualities. I think you'd also be full of passion and drive. You'd be willing to take chances. You'd be an explorer, fond of travel, and naturally inclined towards spirituality. So if it's the sign of Capricorn, I think you'd take everything more seriously, given Saturn's influence now. I think life experience might shape your personality in such a way that you become very disciplined and organized, and your style of living can end up guiding others. If it's the sign of Aquarius, then Saturn and Rahu are also having a say. There's always going to be something unconventional about you. The path you might take might be the path less traveled, and then that path actually becomes an inspiration for others, whether it's to do with your line of work or your life experience can be such that others take inspiration from you. So if it's the sign of Pisces, the native would be highly spiritually inclined. Think of all the Nakshatras in different padas. Rewati in its last pada symbolizes a spiritually inclined person more than any other nakshatra pada combination. And I think your demeanor might be such that people seek your guidance. They are inspired by your philosophical outlook, and you'd also be very fond of travel and exploration in general. So a lot depends on which planet falls in Revati and where is it placed in the divisional charts, but studying a planet's position in Revati in isolation is an excellent start, so let's do that. So if Moon is in Revati, I think you'll naturally be spiritually inclined. You'd have a very creative, imaginative mind. You'd look after people by guiding them. So your expression of care would be to show people the right path in life. So you'd express your maternal side by being a teacher, mentor, and guide to people. You'd be very inclined to serve people. This combination can even lead to you being a social worker. This constellation is a lot about making progress towards truthfulness, righteousness. So you'll make the effort, you'll think about doing the right thing. I think you'd also possess the power of empathy. So when you offer help, it wouldn't be for selfish reasons. You could also be responsible for looking after animals. If this combination falls in one of your career-related houses, particularly the 6th house, I think the native would know how to find a solution when a situation is complex, particularly at an emotional level. The native can be a counselor to family disputes. If there is a case of allocation of assets to different family members, the atmosphere is emotionally charged, a moon Revati like native can step forward, understand what people are going through and help find a solution. The native can make an excellent mediator, a negotiator of some kind. I find this position to be a very strong position, as moon is now in the environment, the sign ruled by Jupiter, and moon and Jupiter share an excellent relationship. That's my view. When sun is in Revati, the first thing is the native would be spiritually inclined. The native would be very intelligent. Sun and Mercury are coming together. And that intelligence, the ability to find solutions, would shine through in one's career. The native could also make an excellent teacher, mentor, guide, counselor, consultant of some kind. Sun is known to bestow the quality of nobility, and this constellation is a lot to do with righteousness. So one of the greatest qualities the native would have would be that the native would make the effort to walk the right path and also inspire others to do so. Like a political figure who has made the effort to eradicate corruption and is now acting as an inspiration for others to follow the same path. Or a spiritual leader who has followed the path of righteousness, who has practiced meditation, is now leading others to follow the same path. The native can attract a following. I think this is one of the combinations where the native can oneself move away from the central plane, the material plane, to the spiritual plane. I think the native might have the best chance of transcending on a spiritual plane. I'm hardly seeing any downsides to this position, as Sun shares an excellent relationship with both Mercury and Jupiter, and therefore I find this position to be very, very strong. That's my view. When Mercury is in Revati, I think your creativity firstly would be expressed through words. I think you'd make an excellent creative writer, an advertiser, creative storyteller, a journalist. In just a few words, you can capture the entire emotion. This combination belongs to fiction writers. I think you'd be excellent at explaining things to people. And it's your explanations that might act as a guide for others. You can even simplify religious and spiritual scriptures. I think based on your analytical and logical ability, you'll possess an inherent belief that you can find a solution to any problem. I think you'll have faith in your analytical and logical ability, and you'd also attract a following for your inherent optimism, for your intelligence. You'd be known for your big thinking, your philosophical ideas. Some people might find your views impractical, and that's due to a difficult relationship Mercury shares with the sign ruler Jupiter. Other than that, I find this position to be a very, very strong one. I think you do very well in the business sector, particularly where it has to do with laying down a path the company needs to follow to turn profitable, to turn more profitable. So I think in many ways you can be a guide to businesses. That might be your role. This combination also belongs to language teachers. When Venus is in Revati, I think your creative ability would be extraordinary, and you must consider doing something artistic. Secondly, think whatever you do, you are going to do with all your heart. You're going to be a very loving person, a very charming person. The way you explain things the way you have day-to-day conversations, you'd always have a smile. Venus is super strong here. So irrespective of how other planets are placed in your chart, you'd have a very attractive, charming personality. When it comes to love and relationships, you'd be a very loving and a very giving person, and a very forgiving person too. You'd believe in the concept of true love. You could be fond of romantic novels and movies. When it comes to money, firstly, I think you'll attract good luck. Venus is exalted, and secondly, you'd make an excellent financial advisor, particularly guiding people on how to safeguard their future. So your investment advice could be centered around safety, making sure people are not risking their investment or risking what they already own. You'd make an excellent teacher. Venus belongs to the caste of a Brahmin, which translates to a teacher. Lord Pushan, if you remember, I'd mentioned, is also known as the god of prosperity. So when Venus is here, the native can experience all the luxuries on a material plane, particularly when you're going through Venus's Antardasha. One of the major downsides I see here is a conflict where the native may have to choose between going after things of the world on a material plane or follow a path more spiritual. No matter what you do, I think you'll be an inspiration for people. You'll attract a following. I find this position to be a strong one. That's my view. When Mars is in Rewati, I think this combination belongs to yoga teachers or the ones who perform physical therapy of some kind. This can even translate to you having an engineering career linked to the shipping industry, railways, roads, to the airlines, any means of transportation. Revati is a lot about transportation, as Lord Pushan is responsible for transporting us to the next journey. I think the native would be an excellent problem solver. No matter how complicated the problem is going to be, the native would find a solution. This can translate to the native being an innovator. The native would be very caring, and the native's style of looking after one's loved ones would be by removing obstacles in their lives. Like if your sister is coming to the airport, you'd go and pick up your sister, removing the obstacle of hiring a taxi. So if your brother is moving to a new place for a job, you'd make the necessary inquiries and the necessary arrangements. You'd express your creativity through some engineering technical skill of some kind. Earlier I mentioned you can be an innovator, an inventor. One of the major downsides is that you could be argumentative. Mercury and Mars do not share a good relationship. So on the question of which path to follow, whether it's to do with a strategy, a business strategy, or product design, the native can be argumentative. The native would debate one's idea to be better, one's strategy, one's product design to be better, and therefore the native can come across as uncompromising. The native would be very fond of travel and exploration, and given Mars and Jupiter's strong relationship, I find this position to be super strong. I think when Jupiter is in Revati, this translates to you guiding the society with your knowledge, your philosophical point of view. I think you'd be spiritually inclined and would be very keen to understand religious and spiritual scriptures. Alternatively, this combination belongs to the ones who are teachers, mentors, guides, educators of some kind. From teaching languages to business education to spirituality, the native has to play that role in the society. Earlier I shared the example of Paramhansa Yogananda. He had Jupiter in Revati. The native would have a great sense of right and wrong. And that wisdom, that understanding, the native can very effectively share with the world. The The native could be an expert in bringing a change in the lives of people. The native could find oneself working in de-addiction centers, removing individuals from sensual pleasures. The native would be very fond of travel and exploration, and in one's life the native would encounter plenty of growth opportunities and plenty of opportunities to learn, whether it's through an institute of higher learning. The native might be lucky in getting through the best institutes, and the native would also be lucky in getting the best teachers in life. The native would know how to find a solution to any problem, and that would be driven by the native's inherent optimism due to Jupiter and Rewati coming together. You know what, I'll be able to find a solution. I'll also be able to overcome this difficulty. Like the ones who are fighting cancer, but believing, no, I'll be able to recover. That inherent optimism can actually pave the way for others who are suffering similarly. There's a lot to like about this position. Nothing is beyond the capabilities of the native. That's my view. When Saturn is in Revati, I think the service-orientedness linked to this constellation and the Mridu nature, the soft nature, would be visible. The native would not only be guiding people but also consider it one's duty, and the native might remain detached from self-interest. The native would know how to fight continually, and with patience and perseverance the native would know how to find a solution to any kind of problem. And that process of finding a solution can be an inspiration for others. So when guiding and serving others, the native might quote one's own example. The native might have recovered from a long-term health issue. I'm not saying you'll go through it. This is just an example. Or in another case, the native has recovered from a loss in business. The journey from there to full recovery can be an inspiration. So people want to follow that path. That, you know what, if this person can do it, we can do it too. That is the example you're going to set. The native would look after and protect people in tangible ways and would be known to possess the power of empathy. When it comes to one's spiritual inclination or even religious practice, the native might be more traditional and conservative. The native can also be a knower of an ancient science of some kind. Altogether, I think the native would be a reliable, mature and responsible person, setting the right example which others might follow. I find this position to be a strong one. That's my view. When Rahu is in Revati, I think the native would make an unconventional educator. By that I mean maybe the native is explaining something in a unique manner, or the topic of explanation itself is very unique. Like the native might try to explain stock market trends based on astrology, or based on international politics, or the native is explaining an uncommon ancient science of some kind. The native would make an excellent business person. Think Rahu, Mercury coming together is a sign of a business person, and a very clever one, a very smart one. The native would be quick to express an opinion. Think the native's unconventional style and uncommon knowledge can attract a following. So here the native might encourage people to do the same. The native, for example, could know a foreign language. The native could be a resident of Italy but may know how to speak Japanese. And that may inspire others to also learn about the Japanese culture and about their language. Things which are difficult to understand. Why does this person speak a foreign language uncommonly spoken in the entire region? Or why does this person know this ancient science never heard of? I think the native, even though would be spiritually inclined, would be a philosophical thinker, the native could delude oneself into thinking I'm following the right path. Introspection and proper guidance would be crucial. The native might realize with time what I was thinking was the right path was actually the wrong one. So here the native can actually misguide not only oneself but also others. That's always linked to Rahu. The native would be fond of travel and may run into many opportunities to do so and can have a future in technology-linked transportation industry. Altogether, I think the native would be seen as an outcast on the basis of one's knowledge and opinions, and the native can be guilty of delusion, and that is something the native would need to fight. That's my view. When Ketu is in Revati, firstly, this indicates a natural spiritual inclination due to a past life association. I think the native can transcend on a spiritual plane quickly, and that realization can occur suddenly. The native could naturally be drawn to detach oneself from the sensual plane and attach oneself on a spiritual one. The native could be an expert in an ancient science, and that unique knowledge could be a source of guidance for others. The native would naturally be very intuitive, so whether it's about solving a complex problem, or building a strategy, or finding lost items or missing people, the native would have this natural intuition that, you know what, why don't you look there and you'll find it? Why haven't we searched there? Perhaps he's gone there, perhaps she's gone there. And this can translate to a career in espionage or in crime solving. One of the only downsides I see is the native can turn to addictions. Ketu symbolizes detachment, and so does this constellation. And like Rahu, there'll always be the case of delusion. The native might begin to believe the path one has chosen is the right one, even when it's wrong. In this combination, I think the native would benefit from seeking proper guidance and not disregarding the guidance one is receiving. I think the native would be quick to discard teachers in one's life, and therefore the native should make a continuous effort to seek guidance and stay with that teacher, to learn from that teacher. You should make a conscious effort to learn from others. Altogether, this is a very fascinating position. I think it's a better position than Rahu. Thank you for watching this video till the very end. If you have any questions, please post them in the comment section. And if you'd like to stay in touch, please subscribe to this channel. Thanks again for watching. Bye for now.